And now we are live and recording. I want to say thank you to everybody that decided to attend to the very, very first event for the Salesforce Architect group in Tampa. My name is Carlos Siqueira. I'm the leader of the group. And I'm super, super duper happy to have nobody else less than Mark Braga and Zane Turner from Salesforce to have the very first event, to set the pace. And with that said, Mark, you take it away, do your introduction, and do as you please.
Cool. Thanks, Carlos. Can you turn my video on? It says I can't start it. The host has stopped it. I don't know how you can turn that on, but if you could, that'd be great.
I'm telling you, I made you a whole. Okay, let me see now. Make you a host now. Let's see if that helps. Okay, says that now it's going to be the new host. Let's see what it is now. See if you can share your screen or do something.
There we go. Okay. Hey everyone. Good to see some familiar names on here. My name is Mark Braga. I live in Tampa, and I'm part of the architect relations team at Salesforce. And I've got a few slides to go over. We have what, like seven people on? Carlos, would you be okay if we did a round the room and just got to know everybody?
Yeah, I mean, we have, as I said, we have a plenty of time. There was 30 people that sign up. Half of them don't show up, but hey, we look for quality, not for quantity. So help yourself.
Cool. All right. So I've got let me just jump to my intro slide, and then I'll go around the room and we can have everybody introduce themselves. Because since it's a Tampa user group, architect group, Carlos, thank you for spearheading that and getting all the architects in the area all on this group. It would be nice to get to know everybody that's in the area, architects, what you're focused on at your companies, and also your careers, so we can stay aligned and see how we can come together and help one another. So let me share my screen. I'll start the intro. Okay. There we go. Okay. So like I said, I'm with the Salesforce Architects team here. Our team name is Architect Relations, but out there in the ecosystem, you'll be more familiar with the Salesforce Architects brand. So I'm excited to be here because, like we said, it's the Tampa Architect group. So I thought it would be a good way to kick it off and go over what we do, who we are, what our goals are in the architect relations team, and what we do for you to try to help you do your jobs as best as you can and do the best work of your lives as architects with the tools and the resources and the connections that we provide within Salesforce Architects. So maybe towards the end with the Q&A, depending on where this discussion goes, we might get into some forward-looking items, but everybody's probably familiar with this slide. Base all your purchases on what's available in the product today, and not anything we might discuss that's not available yet during this conversation. And now the intro. So my name's Mark. I moved to Tampa in 2005. I'm originally from New England. I'm in the architect relations team. I'm a senior director at Salesforce. Specifically in our architect relations team, I manage technology and operations. So we have a team of evangelists, and our fearless leader, Zane Turner, is going to join us probably halfway through the hour. So I joined the team as an evangelist, and now I help coordinate with our evangelists and also cross-functionally with the rest of our product engineering teams, marketing teams, and partners like Ian and Carlos and others on helping build out solutions for our customers and also for other architects in the ecosystem. So I moved to Tampa in 2005. I started as a developer, LampStack, .NET, Apex, JS, mobile app development. Spent a lot of time doing payment processing, and also as a quality assurance engineer for software for hardware at Jabil circuit down the street. So I was a customer for a long time before joining Salesforce. I managed at 1.9 Salesforce orgs at Jabil, condensed that down to 3, and managed the business systems over there at Jabil. And then I joined Salesforce in 2016. I spent the first 4.5 years as a program architect in our customer success group. That role is dedicated to, you get dedicated to at least one of our most large complex customers, and I've really become embedded in that customer, and for at least a year spend day in, day out helping them get their solutions built out according to architectural best practices, so across all the architectural domains, and including governance, because a lot of what we talk about as architects is on the strategy side, road mapping and future-proofing your solutions, but also the maintenance side of it, and ensuring that you're actually building something well, and a solution that actually delivers value for your customer and for your company. So that was a big part of my first half at Salesforce. And then in 2018, I became a certified technical architect. And the reason I bring that up is because I'm still a review board judge. I coach and mentor other architects, CTAs. I managed the internal candidate pipeline for North and South America for about 2.5 years. I see Melissa on, so we have another CTA here, and Charles. Charlie, good to see you, another CTA. So anybody in the region that is thinking about pursuing the CTA, that's in Tampa, we can have conversations about that, and I'm happy to help you along that journey as well. I joined the architect relations team right at the beginning of the pandemic. Literally, I got COVID in February 2020 during my interview with Zane, and so that kind of put some delays in the interview process. But my first and foremost goal with joining this team was, I knew as an architect, day in, day out with our customers, building solutions, Salesforce was not making it as easy as we could. We weren't providing enough resources for architects to do their jobs well. Myself, even as a Salesforce employee, going in and oftentimes trying to solve some of the same problems with different customers, oftentimes having to be very resourceful and source my information, do a lot of research, and ultimately provide that recommendation to the customer. And we have a huge amount of very, very talented and smart architects out there in the ecosystem, Salesforce and non-Salesforce architects, of course. And so my first goal here was solve those top gaps for architects to do their jobs really well. Decide what tools they should use to build their solutions, give them tools to help build those things out, diagramming tools, roadmaps, data models, that sort of thing. And then provide a way for architects to contribute the really valuable architectural resources that they build day in, day out for their work, and provide a way for them to give that to the community to leverage, and of course, attribute it to those really capable and smart architects that are creating those resources. So as you see on the architect website and on the blog, everything we produce is attributed to the author, because that's super important. And then I've got my handles there. If we're not connected, please reach out on LinkedIn or on Twitter. And I went to undergrad computer science at University of South Florida and grad school at the Gators. So this year is particularly interesting. I'll be in Gainesville for the game, but I'll have my USF gear on because I'm first a Bulls fan and second a Gators fan. All right. So, and by the way, if anybody has any questions or anything, feel free to interrupt me. This doesn't have to be a presentation, because at the end, especially when Zane joins, we can get into Q&A. I'd like to learn more about everybody on this call and what you're working on, where you work, and how we as a community of architects within Tampa can come together. And so when we talk about architect relations, our vision is really simple. We activate and empower and inspire architects. And so architects are the most trusted advisors in the ecosystem, and we have this conversation a lot. It's potentially a smaller group within the roles of Salesforce when you think of admins and developers, but by far the impact that architects drive is much more significant. Architects are the trusted advisors that unlock new opportunities within your organizations and at your customers, and you're the most experienced practitioners. And really, of course, we know there's different architects along the spectrum of experience and such, but either way, you're typically the most experienced practitioners of the platform, and especially how that fits into the broader landscape within your organizations. And it's not just our team that believes that the work that architects are doing are really important. It's supported here. The job market itself is pretty astounding. There's a 10-to-1 gap in demand for architects. It's by far the most in-demand role in the Salesforce architect ecosystem. There's been incredible growth every year in the demand for architects, and that's because, as 10K Advisors here has helped us with their research, 98% of A-grade implementations, meaning successful implementations, those that result in a go live, that don't result in shelfware, that don't result in red accounts, 98% of those have an architect in the role of leading that implementation. 100% of very high return on investment implementations, same thing, have architects at the helm. Not surprising, especially as we talked about how architects are so often focused on not just building the technical components, but also ensuring that it aligns to the stakeholder motivations and tying what you're building to the business objectives. And we've got, this came up at TDX at one of the sessions on selling your solution to stakeholders, and also in the governance section, strategies on how you can do that, how you can ensure that you're building the right things, especially when you're that bridge between IT and the business. So it's the most in-demand role. You probably, as architects, already feel that. And so the reason for that and why there aren't more architects is because it's not easy. It's especially not easy when you're in an enterprise environment and you're trying to do this at scale. You have siloed teams that you want to really bring together and create engaged stakeholders. You have ad hoc security that you're trying to bring to a more mature privacy by design strategy. Of course, you have point to point, and you're trying to move to an event-driven architecture. You want to do this at scale, and you want to be more proactive with your service to your customers and with your service to your internal customers as well. And it's because of this, it's because of that gap in the demand within the ecosystem, and because of the complexity of the jobs that you architects do every day, that our team even exists. And that's just one of the ways that Salesforce is investing in architects. So we'll go into these a little bit more so everybody knows the kind of things that we provide. But for those reasons, we are focused on investing in the success of architects through resources like architect.salesforce.com, which has architectural diagrams and templates, has frameworks, design patterns, documentations, and more. We have our architect decision guides, which we'll dive into a little bit more. If you're not familiar, we have the Salesforce Diagrams, which is a framework on how to approach diagramming and communicating your solutions to your stakeholders, but also kit parts in helping you actually build the diagrams. And then, of course, the architect blog, and this is filled with how-to guidance. There is thought leadership there from internal and external, including Ian here on the call. We have blogs coming out from Ian soon since we opened that call for content. I don't think it's got published yet, Ian. I know it's in the backlog. And now this year we'll also be opening up submissions to the architect website as well. So if you have diagrams that are using the Salesforce Diagram Kit, you can submit those coming shortly to the website as well. So you can submit content not only to the blog, but also to the architect website and have your work shared and leveraged across the ecosystem, and of course attributed to you. So if we jump into a couple of the the key points of the resources that we provide, especially these three, because they were by far the most requested types of resources when we were spinning up our team. Also, based on my own experience, different points of each of these we focused on, because we all as architects experience them firsthand internally as well. So the tools we're creating help you focus on the work that you're doing. So we have product roadmaps, decision guides, and Salesforce diagrams, and we can get into each one. So let's start with product roadmaps. The reason we created the product roadmaps is because we have awesome partnerships and awesome products and awesome features that are always being announced. And like this one here with our expanded partnership with AWS. But as a technical practitioner, as an architect, what does this sort of resource really help you do? Today, you have, or before the roadmaps, you had idea exchange, you had release notes, you were maybe connecting with your account executive, maybe you could get into a pilot or a beta, maybe you had connections with the product team and you could get insight into their roadmap. But we built product roadmaps within the Architect website for a very specific reason. And that's because as an architect, you're building your roadmaps for your customers and your companies, and it's pretty difficult to do that if you don't have clear visibility into what Salesforce roadmap looks like across the product portfolio. And so we have released this tool and we're working on it, every week to expand it. And so that you can start to build your roadmaps with Salesforce. And so when you're making a decision on whether or not to build something, you have clear visibility into if a feature like that is coming down the road, and you can start to plan whether you can start to plan your roadmap rather than introducing technical debt into your solution because you didn't know something that might be coming up in the next release. And so the Salesforce product roadmaps are on the website. It's your central hub for knowing what's next. It's the single destination across all the product portfolio. You can see here in the screenshot, we give 12 months visibility broken out into quarters. And the reason we do that, as opposed to what the original release had, which was summer release, is because now that we've grown with acquisitions and we have developer tools for the platform, not every product that we have follows the seasonal release cycle. Products like CDP actually release every 2 weeks. And so with our goal of expanding across the entire product portfolio, we want to give you the visibility and a timeline that makes sense for how you plan, which is more based on what's coming in the next 3 months, 4 to 6 months, all the way out with 12 months of visibility. So that gives you the insight you need to plan your roadmap accordingly. Everything on the roadmap component is fully searchable, filterable by release, by product area. And you can even persist that URL. So if you make a bunch of filters, you can grab the URL and you can revisit that, and it will persist the filters that you had there. So if you're trying to share a particular view for, let's say, that AWS integration, that AWS partnership, and the features that are part of that product area, then you can share that URL and it will preload that filter. So we have about 25% of the products covered today. But I say that with an asterisk or a caveat, because it's 25% of the product areas. It's not 25% of all the product features within that product. So we're working diligently now to expand that across the entire company. So our goal by the end of the year is to have at least 50% of all products and features in this Roadmap Explorer. Next is decision guides. The road mapping is just one part of your job as an architect, right? So, like I said, as we grow through innovation or through acquisition, it becomes really difficult to decide what products to use and when. And so as an architect, you need to make those trade-offs. You need to weigh those trade-offs. You need to assess those risks, and you need to essentially come up with a decision that you're going to recommend on how to build your solution with which tools. Based on several different constraints you might be weighing, based on volumes, limits that you might encounter, that sort of thing. And so we built the decision guides as a way for you to choose the right tool for the right task. And so let me go back, there we go. This is information that is directly from Salesforce. So we work really closely with the product teams for each area of these decision guides. So it's written in combination with us, other architects, and the best practices straight from the product teams. This helps to evaluate the trade-offs and the advantages of going with each product. Like the first one that we released, the record triggered automation and building forms, those are great examples of one of the most successful resources we've produced, because it gives the architects the information that they need to make an informed decision about their solution. Unlike documentation that you see elsewhere from Salesforce or even for the other audiences, these are not meant to be how-to guides. They're not meant to be very prescriptive on like, hey, you should do this in this situation sort of thing, because all the situations vary, right? And that's your job as the architect, to take all that information in and make that decision. So this is meant to complement all those other very prescriptive documents and also what you find in Trailhead. This is also not a call to refactor everything that you've done, because now we might recommend in one of the key takeaways, for instance, that you don't use Process Builder going forward. That isn't meant to be, interpreted as, hey, go back and remove all Process Builder, but you should have that information that going forward, Salesforce isn't investing in that in the future. Here's how you should plan future implementations. And also as an architect, you should have a plan to refactor that at some point, so that you're on a more sustainable and healthy solution going forward in the way that Salesforce is building, but it's not an urgent call to refactor. This is ultimately a resource that helps you make more informed decisions as you go about your architectural work. And it helps you know that you're aligning your decision-making, your solutions, your roadmap with the strategic thinking of Salesforce and where we're going from a company and the product direction we have. So where gives you credibility in your solutions, because you can make recommendations that align with what our product teams are ultimately recommending. And now Salesforce Diagrams, which we launched at TDX in 2021. We launched the framework and the approach to creating diagrams, so the styles and the levels that are based on the C4 model. And then in Dreamforce, we launched the kit of parts. So you have the shape library that you can create at that point, the Google and PowerPoint templates, and also the Lucidchart partnership. So you're probably familiar with the Salesforce diagrams before, but if you're not, this is our way of helping you build more predictable diagrams faster than ever. But at its core, it's helping you convey your ideas the most efficient way to your stakeholders, because the approach to creating the diagrams and communicating the diagrams to your stakeholders really comes down to two things: the audience, who you're talking to, and the purpose of your message. We oftentimes as architects are that bridge between the business stakeholders and the technical stakeholders. And so those are two different audiences, and you're trying to sell or communicate two different, very different things to each one. And so that shouldn't be the same diagram that you're trying to communicate those two different messages to. And so the framework walks you through that with the different styles, marketing, strategy, and sales, and the different levels, and which elements should be part of each one, or technical and documentation and implementation style diagrams, and the different levels there, like a system landscape all the way down to a data model. It helps you do this in a predictable way. So again, we're not really prescriptive on like you should build your diagrams. Like we have the styles and levels, but we're not very prescriptive on like this is exactly how you should use this card and format it this way. We do communicate best practices and some standards on how to do that. But more importantly, it's a kit of parts. Like you as an architect now should have the tools that you need to communicate your purpose to the audience that you're communicating with. So it's a set of branded cards and variations to do that, a set of icons, and of course that header, which gives you that consistent look and feel, so that no matter where you're coming from, it's either on the architect website or you may come across diagrams when you Google search, or if you're jumping into the different partners that offer the diagrams, you know you're looking at a Salesforce diagram. You have the header, you have the description, you have the legend, and you can understand everything you need to. The key message about this, and we just had workshops at TDX on it, is if you feel like you're putting too much into a diagram, then you probably are. Like, we had a workshop where it was a diagram that had objects included with systems and relationships there, with some notation on how that business process might work. And it was all in one diagram. And that's because the architect was thinking about themselves, not trying to be critical there, but like, as architects, we're focused on like putting the artifacts on the page that we know and helps us understand. But when we think about the audience we're communicating with, that's very difficult to digest all that information in one diagram, and your message is lost. And so we go through, let's separate the systems, let's separate the objects, let's separate the items that are more business process oriented, and put them into the right levels. And now you have a set of diagrams that you can call on, based on the need for the purpose and the audience that you're trying to communicate. And we do this in the tool of your choice. So we want to help architects do the best work of their lives, and we want to meet them where they're working. And so we have that in PowerPoint and Google Slides. Surprisingly, still a lot of traction on those. And we have the Lucidchart library, and we have several more partners coming up. So we'll be excited to announce that this year as well. And am I missing anything on that? Because the diagrams are one of the, when we were launching them, I was hesitant to launch all that upfront enablement on, how to go about even creating the diagrams with the styles and the levels, but we've gotten a ton of feedback. That was just like an area that architects were hungry for, especially aspiring architects and even very experienced architects, as like sort of a reset. It kind of removes the stress from creating the diagram when you have a framework to follow, and helps you put the right elements into the right buckets based on the purpose and the audience. Also, we've gotten a lot of feedback from partners that this has been a great framework to help upskill the architects within their organization that they're putting in front of the customers. So it's a great basis for them to go in and start that conversation about, what the requirements are and how to communicate that all the way through to how it's going to be ultimately implemented. And so what's next? Well, yeah, sorry about that. So we have a lot of updates coming this year. We have the product roadmaps. We're going to be switching that over to rebranding that as a Roadmap Explorer, because it's really what you're doing. You're exploring the roadmaps across the company. And so you'll have way more products and product areas on there. We'll have more filters that become available as more products come onto the tool, and better ways for you to share how you're using that tool. We have new partnerships coming up with Salesforce Diagrams that are going to be super exciting. I'm sure we're going to be talking about it on this call in the coming months. And then we have the Architects blog. So we're opening that call for content back up in July. So keep an eye out on the blog. We'll make an announcement there, and then the intake form will be posted, and you can submit your content. It'll be likely towards the mid to the end of July, where the open call for content. So if you have any ideas, you can go to the website and check the link and start there. We have the Architect blog template, and you can use that to start crafting your blogs now, so that by the time the call for content comes, you're ready to go. You can submit it, and we can review it first thing when the call for content closes. And then, of course, well architected. If you aren't familiar with this one, it's really our big focus this year, our number one initiative. We announced it at Dreamforce last year. You might be familiar with other well architected frameworks in the industry from Azure and AWS. And it's all about simplifying for architects, and showing architects what healthy solutions look like, and helping you understand where you should focus your time. It's divided into two levels. And you can see here, the top level is capabilities, and capabilities describe what the solution should be. So well-architected solutions should be trusted, they should be easy, and they should be adaptable. And behaviors are the level below that. And behaviors make up the second level of the framework, and they describe how a solution should act. And in order to, how a solution should act in order to support that specific capability. So, for example, trusted solutions should be secure, should be compliant, and they should be reliable. Easy solutions should be automated, they should be simple, and they should be engaging. And adaptable solutions should be flexible, resilient, and reusable. And part of what we're launching later this year is assessments to help you understand where you should spend your time. So we'll have tools and resources that assess your pre-build design choices. If you were at TDX, you might have caught Zane and Tom's session on this. And then we'll also have another assessment to help you validate your existing solutions based on your inputs to the assessment. And then the output will be a set of resources to help you focus your time on those critical areas that come out of the assessment. So let's say one of the areas that comes out of the assessment is that you need to work on the security within the trusted capability of your solution. And so we'll give you an output of some suggested resources that you should refer to help ensure that you are creating a trusted solution that's secure. And we're not creating this alone, so we'll be releasing this later this year, and we want to build it with you. So we'll have ways for you to provide feedback on how you've used it and how it could be improved and what more you would like to see from it. So stay tuned for on our channels, on the Salesforce Architects channel handle on LinkedIn, also on Twitter, myself, Zane, the rest of our team, and within the blog, because of course we'll do a lot of announcing on the blog as well. So I think Zane joined. I think she joined.
Yeah,
cool.
She's there.
Good. So that is everything about us and what we do at Salesforce Architects. And maybe I'll kick it over to Zane, and then we can do around the room. Like I was saying, I'd like to get to know everybody that's in especially the Tampa area, and everybody that's on the call can probably get to know one another, and we could hear more about what everybody's working on.
Mark, since I gave you the host, I'm no longer the host. Can you make Zane the panelist?
Yeah.
Or maybe I just reclaim the host.
Can you do that?
Let me see if I reclaim the host. Yes, I have. So now let me see what I can do here for Zane. Don't you love these things? Now, how do I make Zane the panelist here? Oh, attendees. Okay, let me see what I can do here for Zane. Allow to talk. Yes. More. Promote to panelist. There we go. Beautiful. There you are, Zane.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Zane.
Hey.
Zane, I'm not sure when you joined, but I was going through the overview of our team, what our key resources are, and what we're working on this year.
Yeah, I joined just in time to hear you talk about the blog CFP, which we will be opening at the end of July, and to hear you talk about Well Architected, which I'm really excited about.
Cool.
Yeah. And I'm happy to answer any questions or talk, but also I just also want to take a moment to just say thanks for having us, and congratulations, Tampa, for starting an architect group. Thank you, Carlos, for your leadership here. This is really exciting. And for our team in particular, we can't wait to be better partners to all of you in this coming year, and just to be here and hear what's on your mind, what you want to talk about, the ways that you all are helping each other become better architects in this space. We just couldn't be more excited.
Great. Then what that said, Mark has suggested that people go around because we have like a 10 or 12. We count on quality, not on quantity. So if that's okay, if everybody would like to introduce themselves, what they're doing, the way that they see themselves as an architect, or what they need from the architect folks from Salesforce, this is your chance. I mean, Mark and Zane are the driving force on this. So this is your chance to, speak it up and yeah, go around. Of course, Zen is the panelist. She's in charge now, but go around and introduce yourselves and go with the flow. Make sense?
Can everybody, how does that, I know when I first joined, I couldn't speak. I don't know if everybody else is limited to speaking.
No, everybody here is allowed to talk. I mean, just say ask to, I mean, Charlie, I know that Charlie,
yes,
he has the
test
open
this.
mic.
You hear me?
Cool.
Yeah, Ian as well. Everybody else here is allowed to talk, so feel free.
Can you turn on everybody's video, or if anybody wants to turn on their video, can
Yes,
you
I guess they can't. Let me see here. Well, let me try to do the video thing here, but I believe everybody can do.
Yeah, mine says that the host has stopped the video.
I have not stopped anything, you know.
Default setting.
Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Architects, can we improve this technology here?
Yes,
You know,
approved.
Okay, so yeah, well, the video is nice, but you know, if I don't figure out how to put the video here, so let's make sure that everybody can just put their questions or the comments, and we go from there.
Cool.
I think this was set up as a webinar, therefore it's designed for panelists, and then everybody else is not visible rather than the Zoom meeting.
Okay, lesson learned. So let me put here Charlie. I'm gonna make a Charlie a panelist. I'm gonna make everybody a panelist now because we have, you know,
There you go. Good idea.
you know, yeah, I'm gonna be an Oprah
Great
moment.
troubleshooting.
You know, I'm gonna have an Oprah Winfrey moment. Everybody's a panelist right now. You a panelist, you panelist, everybody. How about that? There you go.
Now you can enable us, I believe.
Yeah, I'm promoting everybody to panelist. Yes, I think I got everybody here. Chris, there's 2 more people to promote to panelists. And then everybody should be able to talk and do the video. Yeah, I guess, Charlie, can you try to turn your video on?
Yes, it says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it. Maybe at this point, you should be able to enable us.
Yeah, and I don't know what to do here because I already made everybody the panelist.
Oh, click on the 3 dots on my picture.
Oh, okay, hold on. I see the video in there, hold on.
Yeah.
Okay. Make a co-host. Let's keep going, folks.
Yeah.
Hey.
Don't bother about the image.
There we go.
Oh yeah, you see, I'm on image. Okay, I can give us a self intro, no problem. First of all, really nice to meet a group from Tampa. I lived in Tampa for 17 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I lived in Tampa Palm for 17 years. And both my wife and I are USF graduates. Of course, we attended other schools. I worked for Verizon Wireless. And when I was at Verizon, I was responsible for the B2B and the B2C orgs we have. We saw that we are pretty big and we are one of the largest customers. Until I joined Accenture, they put me on the VA account. The Veteran Administration org is so complex and so big. I enjoyed that for 3 years, and then I moved to a small, tiny company called Elastics. And even at Elastics, we have been using Salesforce for 12 years. And when our users approach about 3,000, all sort of problems, interesting problems pop up. And currently I'm working on majorly 4 areas. Mark, when you say trusted, I think there are 2 sub areas there. You mentioned security, of course, security. The CIO set up weekly meeting with me. Let's look at this. How do we make Salesforce secure? That's one thing. Another big problem is data integrity. If we're not careful, we can mess up data, and that will help us to lose trust also. So two sub areas of trust. And then we have scalability and agility issue. Scalability is always hard, but I'm so excited that Skill Center is coming. And at least that's an area of problem that we know we have more tools to deal with. Agility is even harder. But I am coming up with many ideas and reading articles also, and I probably will share what I'm thinking about also on Medium with people. Oh, I spoke too much.
Where are you located now, Charlie?
Yeah, so I'm glad to join you, and I look forward to working with you to share ideas and be resourceful together to solve these problems.
Awesome. Where do you live now, Charlie?
I live at Columbus, Ohio. We're still in the same time zone.
Cool. Yeah, go Bulls. Well, as of now, you're a Tampa resident for life, I guess, if you're a Bulls graduate. So you can join our Tampa group anytime.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right, who's up next? How about Ben? Ben, you're a familiar face, but I don't think we've met.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Yeah, my name's Ben Bolding. I feel like I'm relatively new to the Salesforce space, but maybe been around about 4 years or so since my first venture into Trailhead. Since then, I've got a number of certifications. I've worked for an SI, and I'm an admin now, doing work at a financial institution. So I'm really here just to learn and contribute where I can, but I still feel like, I guess, imposter syndrome, right? Like I don't really know that much, and I feel like everyone here has kind of been doing this for a long time, but excited to learn more and just contribute to the community.
Cool.
Thank you. Who else? I see Luigi Vilca. That sounds Italian to me. Luigi, are you able to talk? At least you are.
Rick looks ready.
Yeah, there you go, Rick.
I'm always ready. So I'm Rick Rosler. I'm actually in San Diego. The only time I've ever been to Tampa was to go to Carlos's house for a big barbecue, which was spectacular, I have to say. In addition to the Elements company meeting that we had there, which came in a close second to the barbecue. So I work for Elements. I'm a senior developer. My current claim to fame is that I'm the author of our DevOps Center integration that we announced at TDX. So I just, I work on interesting features and am always interested in architecture stuff. I met Mark at TDX. Zane, I met many years ago. You came to the San Diego developers group to talk about Lightning Web Components. I have a vague recollection. This is probably 3, 4, 5 years ago. I don't know. It was a long time ago.
It was a minute and a half ago, but yeah, I remember.
Yes. So so I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for a long time. I was at Qualcomm, where I ran sales operations for probably too long before I switched over to just kind of be a developer. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Good deal. We have another Floridian here. It's Chris Valentin. Chris.
Yes. Hello. Nice to see everybody. It's pretty cool because there's a couple of us who've worked together here in this group. So I've worked with Charlie, and I was also on the VA program for a little while with a company called B3, which has since been bought out. And Rick, I believe that you did a training for a company that I was with called Pharaoh, maybe at StrongPoint.io.
Oh, yeah. When I was at StrongPoint, I thought I recognized your name, but I couldn't place you.
Yeah, so it's nice to see everybody, and then Mark, I had a great conversation with you at TDX after that governance meeting. So it's nice to see all the faces. Didn't realize you were both. I'm actually a UCF Knight, or at least all my kids are. So I paid a lot of their tuition fees. So I feel like I graduated from there. But as for me, I'm currently on the CTA journey. In Melissa's Slack group and try to participate when I can. Also currently involved in Flow Republic and going through their CTA process. So excited to sit for that board, hopefully by the end of the year.
Nice.
I work for a company called Y Green. We do green project financing for residential and commercial buildings. Right, and we're in the middle of a org rollout, so it's actually due next week. We have so excited to be doing that. I got a chance to go from an old org to a green, to a greenfield type org.
Nice.
Only problem there is that when I started, my requirements consisted of, how do I put it? Lift and shift. I took on the project. Now that I look back, I'm kicking myself in the rear because literally I had 66 JIRA tickets that pretty much said lift and shift. This feature, lift and shift that feature. And as it turns out, not the best way to solution a rollout. So working through that, but excited to see everybody and have others like-minded people to discuss the type of the day-to-day issues, comments, concerns that I think architects go through. And I'll wrap up. 3 things I jotted down I'd like to get from the group is getting ROI. How do we get ROI out of our Salesforce implementations? One of my biggest measurements in my role is how much ROI I can get for my CIO on Salesforce. Right. 2 is business architecture. How much can we influence how our businesses use Salesforce and how they do their business to take the best advantage out of their Salesforce investment? Kind of ties back to ROI, but managing that is, I think, a challenge. And if, like I said, just talking to like-minded people and people who kind of know what we're going through on an everyday basis.
Nice.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
to
you,
hear
Craig.
that.
I see that Melissa does show up in there. Melissa, how do you get a nice hoodie like that?
You like it?
Can I get, do you know anybody in there? Can you hook me up with one?
Got it in San Francisco.
Hey, on the side, we have a straight jackets with that on the chest, just for the qualified people. But Melissa, you need no introduction, but you are force on the CTA, on the architecture. So, so glad that you have this. And for those that don't know, Melissa and I, we have collaborated since we met in Cactus Force forever was, like a brothers and sisters for another mother. And we've been like, since day one, just talking, we're gonna make this architect group reality. We're gonna make it. So we did it. So glad that you joined, and it's your time to talk, Melissa.
Yeah, and here to support the group. And I do have ties to Southwest Florida. I have family in Tampa. I have family in Cape Coral. I lived down there for a couple of years. I actually went to grad school at Florida Gulf Coast. So that's why I lived down there for a couple of years. I was going there for my MBA in information systems. Right now, I'm actually working on a pretty cool project as a program architect for a partner for a very large hotel brand. It's their vacation portfolio, and we're doing something pretty cool. We're taking they have a person account model, so we're taking that and we're breaking it down into account contact model, and it's going to be household accounts and then also property accounts. So then those households will be related to the different properties. So it's very interesting going through that. And then they have, they're bringing on CPQ, they're bringing on Marketing Cloud, Experience Cloud. I think they're, field service. And then I think also analytics. So it's kind of like a little bit of everything. So it's global. So it's a perfect project for a CTA.
Good deal. We haven't heard from Mayanka Shah.
Hi, my name is Mayank Shah. I'm working for PwC, and I was a developer before. Now doing my first engagement as an architect, where I'm migrating legacy credentialing process from the legacy system to Salesforce, utilizing Service Health, and then a managed package app called Versus 12. So doing my first engagement as an architect, and looking forward to learn more and then transition myself into architect in future.
Good deal.
Nice.
Where you based, Mayanka? Where you based right now?
I'm based in Tampa, Florida. I live in Brandon.
Oh, what a surprise, Mark, huh? I thought Mark and I was just the two. That's nice. Mark, Zane, we have somebody in there that's normally shy, but let me put a person on the spot. Ian Gott.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. My video wasn't on. So Ian Gotts, I'm a CEO and co-founder of Elements.cloud. So I've been around the architecture world well, I joined Accenture in 1986. So started mapping processes and doing architectural stuff with Accenture from then. So a lot of the things that you're all struggling with, I think I struggled with for years. I think the biggest program I ran was I had 500 people on the project team. So different scale, but I think Salesforce is now getting to that scale. So I'm delighted to be the San Francisco Trailblazer Architect Group leader. So again, trying to make sure that we get all the right people together to have this sort of conversation. And I think the beauty of virtual means that just because they're in San Francisco doesn't mean they shouldn't contribute to other architect groups around the world. So I think we got a perfect opportunity to actually get some real cross-pollination. So I've been a Salesforce customer for 20 years, 21 years actually, so I'm allowed to drink now. Again, really interesting to see the way Salesforce has grown from being a sort of scrappy startup that Gartner said would never exist to what is a true enterprise play. And I think that's why the role of architect is so important now. Delighted that there's so much energy being put behind it because I think it's so important. Okay, so Ian, without any sales pitch, don't let my boss know about that, but without any sales pitch, what do you think, as a vision, you're the CEO of the company, what do you think Elements can bring to the table, to help architects and, or do you think the company is open to listen to architects and say, hey, this is what we need and try to have a roadmap in there? And what do you think? It's interesting. We started off by supporting business analysts because that's where it started. People said we need better documentation. We had admins and saying we actually need a better understanding about what's in the org. So that's why we built all of the functionality around metadata dictionaries and the dependencies. But I think with the architects now, that's just another dimension on documentation. It's fun. We never thought we were building an enterprise architecture product, but actually, with the requirements that are starting to come through from architects, then absolutely. If we can build the product, which means that all the documentation is visible so every stakeholder can get hold of it, then surely that's the mantra of the architects. So, there's no way about product, but I think about things from the 3 C's. The first is content. It doesn't matter where that content is. If it's in a Lucid chart, it's in a PowerPoint slide, it's in a photograph of a whiteboard, it doesn't really matter. If it's a specification, all that content, we need to aggregate that so that you've got one view of the content. So you're not looking in, oh, that must be a box. Oh, hang on, that's on a Google Drive. I've no idea what that is. That's on Pete's laptop he left. We need to aggregate all that content in one place. The second thing is there's real power. The second C is connection. I think there's real power in having these things connected. So if you know that user story is related to that requirement and that user story has links to those processes and those architecture diagrams and those links to that metadata, suddenly there's power in that connection. So you're actually 2 and 2 equals 22, not 4, because of those connections. And then the third C is context. An org is huge. Some of the people already on the call have said how big some of the orgs are. But if I'm looking through a narrow lens of we're trying to improve, Melissa's issue, which is we're trying to move things from personal accounts to account and contact. Let's worry about the connections there and the content associated with that. And if I can see that more clearly, and I'm not having to look at, the fact that opportunities has 256 record types, I can just focus on that set of changes. That simplifies things. So that idea of content, connections and context is, I think, what's trying to drive us. So instead of saying, oh, we're competition to, Lucidchart. No, we're not. If you've got Lucidcharts and you love them, connect them. Let's not try and, I'm not going to force you to change the way you work. If you love doing that, great, connect it. If you've already got a great way of defining user stories and Jira, you don't want to change, great. Well, actually, there's an integration, connect it. So trying to make sure that we connect all the content and then provide the right context so you can do the job easily. And our mantra is change intelligence. So you've got the intelligence to make the changes with confidence. That's really where it is. And if we can do all that correctly, people should be getting the maximum ROI from Salesforce, which I think someone else said at the beginning, which is customers are out there are spending an enormous amount on Salesforce. How do you exploit that? How do you exploit the platform and get the best value out of it? If we can all do that, everybody wins.
Thank you, Ian. Back to you, Zane and Mark. That's your show. So.
Well, I think Mark and I just wanted to be able to be here. First, Mark did all the heavy lifting. So thanks for letting me join late, everybody. I was volunteering with Rad Women, which I think Melissa knows very much a lot about. So we just had our final session there. So I wanted to make sure that we gave you all an opportunity to ask us any questions. I think Mark gave you great insight into what we're doing, but as long as you have us here, any questions for us?
Can I ask a question about well architected? So is well architected a set of, is that some guiding principles, or do you see that turning into a set of products in some form?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think as Tom and I talked about it at Trailhead DX, if you look in the industry, it's a mix. Well architected across other providers could be both and or. So what we're releasing this year is we're calling it the well-architected framework. It's what Mark shared a little bit of. So it's going to be, so you could call them guiding principles, but it's essentially going to be like white papers, sort of a prescriptive point of view from Salesforce of when you're thinking about building something that is well-architected on the customer 360, the scope we're setting now, the core CRM, the core sort of that center of the customer sales service sweet spot that Salesforce began with. What are some guiding principles that you should have in mind as an architect? And then the second thing we're releasing is, as Mark mentioned, it's these series of assessments. And that's the beginning of what we want to have as tools, and whether and how they get expressed in our product. We're actively talking about that right now with folks across Salesforce. But what we do know is we have to start somewhere with just giving you a measure in the sand to push against, and then also making sure that this is as widely available as possible. Those are the two principles we want to make sure we're sticking to.
Good deal.
I think the prescriptive thing is really important. I think it's easy to say, here are 5 or 6 things you could do, but then you don't give any. With so many of us, we're actually not knowing how to make those decisions. I think at times you've actually got to go, hey, this is what good looks like, and actually make it more prescriptive would be my, that's why I'll applaud that.
Yeah, and we want to keep, we're going to need feedback and pushback from the ecosystem as we release, because we're trying to balance the giving you enough guidance to let you avoid an anti-pattern plus then the idea that the platform is flexible. You're going to need to use it in all these different ways. So finding the line of when are we giving you enough prescriptive advice versus saying something that is just wrong-headed. I think this community is really good at pushing back, but we'll need that. And we're also trying to thread the needle of, we have things like our architect decision guides that are intended to be then a more in-depth look at when should I use this tool for this task. And we don't want to shove that into well-architected. We want well-architected to maybe be a place where you start. And then if you need guidance about something specific, we make a very quick and tactical handoff to the right part of a decision guide. Something like that.
Good deal. Next, anybody else?
I have a question.
Yep.
When people start with Salesforce, it's very comfortable. You sign up with an org, you sign in, and you can use it out of the box. It's an application, right? So by the time they said, well, we need to hire an architect, well, they have already messed up plenty. And by the time they said, well, let's spend big money, hire a CTA. Well, you can imagine when you go there, what kind of problems are waiting for you. So what tools are coming to support people like us who do not have the good luck, like who is that, Chris, who have green implementation, and we are here to solve the tough problems. They are running their business on this. They cannot easily move away, and yet it's messed up. Everybody knows. So what do we do?
That was a big reason that we started with the decision guides. So even if you're not an architect, like, you can start to have the information you need to make the choice about which tools to even start considering for your requirements. That's a good place to start. Chris and I were having a conversation after the governance session as well, talking about how seemingly, Charlie, like, when you get to that point where it's like an architect's brought in or a CTA is brought in, it's a lot of seemingly technical problems that are really governance problems that could have been solved a lot earlier. And so, like, starting with your governance structure, having the whether you call it the COE, but having that body in place, somebody that's representing the data from a business side, from a technical side, with the data stewards and the custodians. And then what Chris and I were talking specifically about, because somebody that was in the audience that day was was really concerned that their dev teams were shipping a lot of code, shipping a lot of features, but not necessarily shipping everything that they needed. And so part of that not getting off track strategy is, part of that governance strategy up front is one of the first things I always talk about is, like, if you, as the architect, you should be connecting with those executive stakeholders, identifying what the corporate goals are, what your stakeholder motivations are, what metrics they're driving to for the business, and then track that. What I've had to do at customers that's gone really well for me is track that all the way down to the user story. You'll have different stakeholders with different KPIs across the business, whether that's the CEO or a VP of a certain BU or CIO KPIs, but being able to, if it's in Jira, create a field, or Azure DevOps, create a field on the user story and track which metric that story aligns to. And if it doesn't align to a story that the business as a whole is driving towards, then you need to ask yourself why you're even working on it. And that I've found whenever I've gone into a Red account or tried to right the ship and things that have gone sideways, it's always just kind of starting at that most basic point, and like, are we even working on the right things for the business?
Gotcha. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Great question. Who else, folks? I mean, we planned this for 2 hours, but the stage is yours. Any more questions? Any feedback? How's the weather in Tampa? The weather now is pretty good, right, Mark?
It's hot. It's getting hot.
Yeah, I have a pool waiting for me. So no, seriously. I mean,
to pick up Charlie's points from the other end, which is, how do we encourage? Salesforce marketing is very strong. So the story that anybody can implement Salesforce, it only takes 20 minutes and do a trailhead badge, is we're fighting against that marketing to a certain extent. So we don't want to kill that off. Salesforce is really, really flexible, really capable. But at the same time, the importance of an architect up front. So how internally are you trying to deal with that? Or is that just politically just too hard?
Dealing with battling misconceptions about the ease of working with our product, or?
But yeah, it's not the ease of the product. The product's great, but the point that, again, anybody can be a trailblazer, anybody can start building applications. And as Charlie said, you're 3 months into the project and suddenly someone switched on personal accounts because they thought it was a neat idea. And then it's not. So it's trying to encourage that actually you wouldn't build a house without actually engaging an architect day one. even if it's a fractional architect, even if it's for 2 days, how do we actually encourage people to go, you don't need a full-time architect, but how do I get hold of a fractional architect just a day or two just to make sure I'm pointed in the right direction before I get started?
Yeah, so that's part of the problem we're trying to solve. And I wish I could tell you that we have, oh, and it's great, and we're going to have this thing in 6 months and it's going to be done. But I think the part that I take heart in is the fact that I think internally there is much more awareness of this reality than there has been. The fact that our team is now working very closely with Parker Harris, I think, is the biggest vote of confidence of a change needs to come. So we've been working pretty deeply with Parker on a couple different things. One is well architected, like getting something out the door to start helping with, let's just get a baseline that we can rally people around, which should help non-architects as well. Like that's the big full vision of, if we do this right, that part-time architect might be available at architect.salesforce.com. In theory, that would be great. But the other thing that we're looking at is internally, we hire a lot of architects. We train a lot of architects. We talk to partners about how they're doing the same thing across their practice areas, as many of you in this room know. And we're not doing enough to also streamline and simplify that, to also make sure that there's coherence in the field, and that we're dealing with two sort of issues, I would say, is that our product is not as easy to architect as the story, as you mentioned, Ian, but then also the business models that have come up in the world because of that reality, and the opportunity to then put very expensive architects on very big accounts, means that there are sort of competing business models that we have to sort out. We have to make it so that partners want to change how they're staffing architects and not always trying to staff the most expensive architect. We also need to make it easier for everyone to get expert advice.
I want to piggyback on that, Zane. That's what Charlie was saying, and Ian hit the nail in there as well. It's like, yeah, Salesforce is easy, and how you manage, because I mean, I'm not going to point fingers on Salesforce, but in one side of the house, you have a Trailhead, Ohana. Oh, it's so beautiful. Everybody gets in there. And, I mean, prior to Salesforce, I've been in Salesforce for just 6 years. I was an architect on the mainframe world with different tools, but the same problems, so I don't need well, it's not that I don't need it, but yeah, it would be nice to have the data management architect certification. But I know exactly what's going on there, because I have to deal with the tables and the mainframe, DB2s, all the things, 35,000 users hooked up on the airlines, things like that. So when I heard about the architect group was being created, I say, well, this is something I only gonna join if I can run the group the way that I envision. Unless, of course, Salesforce tell me, no, you're doing wrong. Why? Well, you have you take any city here nowadays, any city, they have like 300 groups in there. I see groups with people not previous experience, just creating the groups and having the Ohana and have the badge and stuff like that. When I start to fight to have this group, I say, hey, I'm not going to be a elitist. It's not going to be an exclusive one, but it's going to be a fine comb. You don't need to be a CTA, you don't need to be an architect, but you need to face the problems, because everybody gets all the attentions. Oh, you have a BA, we have a developer, we have an admin, we have whatever. But at the end of the day, the trusted advisor are the architects, right? They are the ones that make an influence, with the CEO on a budget that can make an influence on making a $10 million purchase. And that $10 million purchase can become a ROI of a $40 million, $50 million when it comes Black Friday, because we implement a proper system. So the magnitude is much bigger. So what I wanted to set the pace is that I mentioned this to Mark, and he didn't say yes or no, but he saw my point. We had breakfast yesterday, and I say, hey, I don't want this group to be an elitist one, but it's the one that people finally have a voice, because there's too many channels in there for the BAs, admins, and that is the bulk of Salesforce. But I think it's time for people really pay attention with architects. When you talk about digital transformation or scalability, stuff like that, you gotta have an architect. That's why I decide to take on this group, and I hope I'm in the right directions. Make sense, Zane?
I mean, I think it's, I think you have an expert, we have many experts on this call. I know Ian's been doing this work in the community, and absolutely Melissa has been doing this work as well. So I think you have several allies that are trying to find the right mix of how do you open the door, because we have to, we need to. It's not just the right thing to do for our ecosystem and for the balance that I know Mark must have mentioned, but also just as humans. Like, this is the power of our community, is that we are not a tech community that tries to alienate people. Like Ben mentioned, feeling like he had a bit of imposter syndrome, and I still do, but I came up because the community helped me teach myself, and I could then turn around and teach others. And so I think the impulse to want to share knowledge and to want to bring people in is what you have to hold on to. But I do think it's great that we have now a structure with these architect groups to allow folks to then elevate really expert voices and to invite in people that you know and you would trust, and for then you to go to the San Francisco group, as Ian mentioned, and virtually present and be a trusted advisor over there. And that's how we amplify the true trusted advisor nature of architects, is by bringing people in, elevating different voices, pushing ourselves to grow more. And that's exactly what these groups can do.
Good, perfect. So anybody, any other questions, comments, feedback? Otherwise, I give you back your time.
I have two ideas I'd like to ask you and Ian. Okay, so the first idea is how do we reduce spelunking time? Okay, so why do I ask this question? So if you ask, my number one pain is that if a problem comes up, and the developers, the admin said, we don't know what to do with this. The developer said, we cannot figure out either. So so the executive comes here, you're the architect, you must know this. Okay, so now I got to do the deep diving debugging. Okay, it's not the most pleasurable thing to do, but that's something the users says, why this is happening to me? So that reminds me, wherever is the pain is the business value. So I read these two sentences from the book Clean Architecture. It says, of all the aspects of a software system, maintenance is the most costly. And the primary cost of maintenance is in spelunking. Let me spell this for you. This word is a fancy word. I just like the word because to give you an impression. So what it means is to figure out what heck is happening. Do you think everything is documented? No, it's not documented. It just happened to people, and people come to us and why is this happening to us? You got to figure it out. So that is the most painful and the most costly thing for any software, not only Salesforce with some history. So that points to a tool like Elements Cloud. Now I know that if we want to buy Elements Cloud, you want us, all the people to move to Elements Cloud. But is it a possibility to do some bottom up sales, right? Your senior developers, your architects want to use this tool. Well, we sell to these people first, and then if your organization want to use this, adopt this tool, then you already have people who know how to get the business value out of this tool. So it's just an idea I want to suggest to Ian and Carlos.
So we were just having the conversation. One of the offers we've made to the architect community is that we'll provide the equivalent of the consultant license to every CTA.
Oh, okay.
For free.
Okay. Can I give you my credit card? I wanted to use it. I mean,
Absolutely. So I was talking to
motivation.
Yeah, absolutely. The mechanism. I was just talking to our CTO today about the mechanism for doing that. So yeah, absolutely. It's one of the offers we made to the CTA community is that we have a consultant license which enables you to use the full product, and as new features come on board in terms of being able to draw other shapes and so on, but also the ability to understand what's in it all. So yeah, we're going to make that available. I was going to announce that when the blog came out in a few weeks' time, but you're pushing me to do that faster. So we'll get something out and get it to the community. probably through Zane and Mark, we'll get it to you so you understand how you want to communicate that to the rest of the CTAs. So absolutely. I thought it was just something which was, as architects, you're out there trying to get the job done. So our offer to, as part of the community support, would be to make that available. And then again, the other thing is, back to Zane's comment about feedback, stuff that doesn't work for the architects, tell us and let's understand how we can incorporate that. We don't have the right, we don't necessarily have all the right answers. There'll be things that you go from the use cases we're looking at. If it did X, Y, or Z, that would be amazing. Talk to us, and we're pretty responsive about changing or adding to it. So absolutely. Mark, Zane, I'll work with you to work out how you want to publicize that. We've talked about it for the last month or two, but we need to actually turn that into reality for people.
Yeah, we discussed that yesterday with the Mark when we met.
Okay, good, fine.
Yeah, so that's already being addressed internally for another lady on the architect group in there. What's her name, Mark? Karen?
I passed you to Kristen, who manages.
Kristen.
Yeah.
Kristen Buhler. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Charlie, you had two comments, two bits of feedback.
Yes. Well, the first one is, how do we reduce spelunking time? The second one is, can you do a little bit of bottom-up sales? So now you're taking care of the CTAs. I'm happy. I'm not going to speak for other people anymore. No, I'm kidding. So basically, look at this. I have talked with 3 people. I'll give you feedback so that you can think about the value of that. Okay. So when I was at Verizon Wireless, my best developer told me that, oh, hey, I worked for that company. They got me to debug the stuff because I'm the best developer over there. But even if they pay me double, I'm not going back. I don't want to debug those things. Okay. Now, if we have any tool that can make that kind of debugging easy and the discovery easy, you can imagine the developers would jump on it and just save the time. So that's one conversation. Another conversation was my counterpart at Verizon. He also left and he became a consultant. He said, wherever I go, and the people who have a few years of Salesforce, they're asking me, what's the business value in this? Why am I having so much headache? So he said, I'm struggling here to explain to them the business value. So now we got to take care of so many customers who have this. He worked for Deloitte, and he said, all my assignments are just this. So that's another feedback. If you think that's only his personal experience, here it is from a sales executive who is responsible for a large area at Salesforce itself says. He said, yeah, everywhere I go, orgs with many years of history have a lot of technical debts, and some of them are going to a new org, but there are some even who go to a new org and then realize this is so prohibitive in cost. So they came back. So the pain is quite universal. That's my feeling. So we got to do something to ease the pain of these loyal customers and get the business value out of this. I'm all for Salesforce. I'm building my career on this. So.
I mean, I would to plug the elements. When I went, one of my last customers before I joined this team was a big energy and utilities customer in Houston. One of the it's actually like the customer for sustainability cloud, and it's 13. Kind of to your point, Ian, about like 13 business units all spinning up Salesforce and several redundant architectures across the entire org, and the plug elements, like the way I got my head around it all was luckily a small consultant with an MVP on, Geraldine Gray, if anybody knows her in Houston, with NDM, she luckily had elements hooked up there already, and that was like my starting point for getting my head wrapped around the org and where things were and starting to decouple it all. And then, so Ian, I'll let you respond to Charlie, but then I also wanted to ask you to piggyback on your own comment about preventing that with your own tool, the stuff that you were talking about with like citizen developer, but how to keep it all aligned with best practice, because I think there's a good opportunity there.
Yeah, so I think the one thing about technical debt is that not all technical debt is bad. I know it sounds like it is, but if you technical debt in an area where we're not making any changes, it doesn't matter. It doesn't cost us anything. Technical debt in an area that is constantly being changed has a high level of technical debt, a high value or high cost. I think part of this again is trying to get visibility into the implication of that technical debt. So again, knowing this field has actually got 22 flows on it, but all of those 22 flows are never being called and never being used, is very different from an area which has got like 17 record types. Every one of those record types is actually used in lots of places. So it's trying to not just understand, not looking and go, this all's a mess. Actually, some of it, just because it's complex doesn't mean it's bad. Just because it's simple doesn't mean it's good. And we actually need to get beyond that and actually really understand the implications of, okay, we're touching the opportunity object. It's got 15 record types. It's got a ton of Apex classes. It's actually got some managed packages in there. Which of those actually make a difference and can we pull them out? So the work we've currently done around just dependencies is actually helping that. We're working with the event logs team, so we can then start to pull event logs to work out how often things are being used. So that's another dimension on, okay, if we know those flows are never being called, that's not technical debt we need to worry about. So it's that angle. And then the last angle is all complexity. So can we bubble up from the bottom a calculation about the complexity of different things? So we know a flow is really complex, therefore it's not just a flow, it's actually a complex flow versus a simple flow. So we're spending a lot of time looking at what other assets we can pull to actually give you more intelligence around metadata. So that, and a lot of that is we've already got the data. If you've got event logs switched on, you've got all that data. If you switch event logs on day one, you've got 30 days worth of history because that's the way the event logs work. So there's, again, all of our stuff is looking at that. And then the last thing is Salesforce isn't an island. Something we launched last week is you can now build that metadata dictionary for any app. So not just Salesforce apps, any app, on-prem, custom. And then you can manually make the links between metadata items. So it will then build out that visualization. So if you go, well, we've got an Oracle database, great. If you can pull out the metadata of that Oracle database, build a dictionary, make the links between Salesforce and the critical things in Oracle, or maybe it's MuleSoft and MuleSoft is that intermediary. You can then build a true enterprise architecture, and then you've got a place to start documenting, because the biggest excuse people have is, oh, I don't know where to write it. If we can give you the structure and a place to write it, then you can start building out that institutional knowledge. So again, we've got a bigger picture in mind in terms of that whole enterprise architecture, not just Salesforce. And then you add on top of that some of the work we're doing around different diagramming styles, whether it's process maps or architecture diagrams and so on, to give you the full picture. And we need to take away the excuse that, oh, well, I was too busy, I'll document it later. And we need to do as much automatically as we can and then make it easy for you to do the stuff manually if you need to. And that's the vision about where we're going. It's not rocket science. It's just what needs to be done. It's just been, no one's done it and it's been difficult.
Oh yeah. I love to respond to that, because you mentioned an idea I was thinking, because there's so much technical debt. So what I'm proposing is that we're going to allow people to report any technical debt they want to, but they can report 10,000. That does not mean we need to fix all of the 10,000. We're going to only identify the things. We have a few really critical projects. I was said we will analyze all of this and pick the ones which are blocking these critical projects just to fix those things. Now imagine if Elements Cloud can allow us to go through the path and say what are the technical debts on the critical path, and make this faster. That would be saving so much manual effort for us. And very hopeful.
That's the aim. So Mark, you had another comment. Sorry, that you want to be. Did you want me to pick up, or?
It was on that question that you had posed to Zane about the ability for you to stand up Salesforce easily and make all these configurations and deployments. We've had a lot of conversations over the last year about that, how low code is going to be a pervasive skill, just like using spreadsheets. And so that's only going to become more and more prevalent. And so how to merge that or to handle that as an architect with the DevOps processes, with the governance models that are in place, and keep the quality and the standards high, but still support the business for their desire to create their own apps and keep up with the speed that the business expects. And I thought that was a good touching point for what you're doing with DevOps Center, but also with, you know, the things that you just talked about with org discovery and dependency, identifying the dependencies and such.
Can I answer that by taking a slightly different direction? I'll come back to what you said. I think there's a balance between, can we prototype this idea or even prototype this business unit in Salesforce versus we are building a strategic application. And I think those two get mixed up. It may start as a prototype and then it morphs into a strategic application. And we've seen that in Excel spreadsheets. I mean, the number of investment banks where spreadsheets are actually strategic to them, but it just started as someone hacked together a spreadsheet with some macros and then it turned into an application. And I think there's this, at some point we need to go, there needs to be, maybe it's in your decision guides or maybe it's one of the white papers, which is what's prototyping versus building core applications? And when do you stop playing and don't just go, oh, that was good enough, let's push it into production and everybody use it. And there's almost a checkpoint that says, okay, how do we actually do an architectural review of this before it goes live?
Yeah.
Because it's not, no one decides to build a bad application. It just, the prototype made some compromises when he got started just to be able to hack something together so someone was interested. And then it went live. So Rick did an awesome job reverse engineering the DevOps Center to work out how it worked. And he built a prototype. But we didn't make that go live. We took that and then we gave it to our development team and said, right, let's start again, and then did the architectural review, and then we built it. So we built it twice. So the prototype wasn't what's now gone into production. The prototype was, could we make this work? Have any of our architectural decisions, are they wrong? And we then went back and said, right, we'll take the time to build it properly. And maybe there's something around, for one of your well-architected white papers is about the difference between prototyping and building strategic applications, to try and draw that out. Because we don't want to stop people doing stuff quickly, but we do want to stop people throwing that into production and then regretting it later.
Yeah.
If I could say, Ian, that's a great point, because you know that Mark Twain saying that if I had more time, I'd write you a shorter letter, right? It's that sort of thing. Like you're gonna build what gets your requirements done, what meets your requirements. But you know, I did this in 3 lines. If I thought about it, rejiggered it, I might even get down to 1, right? So it sounds like what you're saying is if we had that time and that thought process to be able to synthesize what we're doing into a more streamlined version, that takes a couple iterations. Like I know, usually if I develop a class, I know my 3rd refactor is my favorite, right? Because that's when I've got it down from 100 lines to 60 lines, or you know, something to that effect. And it sounds like what you're saying, just on a bigger scale, right? If I could rewrite my app, how would I rewrite it? And even I'm doing my greenfield implementation, I know I already wish I could do things a little bit differently, right? And it's not even rolled out yet. So that is a great point. If we can kind of bridge that gap between that first version and the 3rd version, that would save time and probably even get us that ROI that I know I'm looking for. But go ahead.
But I think it's realizing that there actually is something called prototyping, which is different from strategic application building. And I think that all gets lost in the mix, which is you just start building and Agile says at some point the right answer will come out. And that is not true for strategic applications. So I think it's calling out the fact that actually there is a different phase of work that you do if you're then going to go and apply it. And I think that's the bit that gets lost in the citizen developer, because you don't even know there's a difference. I started building a house, never realizing that you actually needed to decide about wiring before you started putting floors in, and you discover later. And that's a citizen builder goes, I've no idea. Oh, hang on, you want another floor? Where am I going to put the stairs? I don't even know what stairs are. It's that kind of stuff, which is how do how do we give the citizen developer the knowledge of what it takes to be a strategic builder rather than a citizen builder? And maybe there's some, that's a white paper or something. Maybe it's a trailhead that we actually get, that the admins get.
Well, so like it's hard enough for even a disciplined architect to not have a prototype end up in production with all the pressures that come along with timelines and all that sort of thing. So it's like I'd be interested in having you all submit a blog in July about where that line is for you. Like Rick, when you were saying, okay, this is my prototype, what is different about what I'm starting now with the actual production application version? What will like those inputs and that sounds like a great architect blog for the next call for content.
I'll tell you a secret. I specifically did the prototype in such a way so that it could not go into production. And so I actually wrote a little web server on Amazon that basically did the work. I did very little work in Salesforce to talk to the DevOps objects. So I did the absolute minimum to show that if you did something in DevOps, that we could actually get information back somewhere in the cloud, right? And where I did it so far away from our product in the cloud that it's impossible to turn it into a product, right? And so once we proved that it was feasible, right, then we figured out, okay, so I have all this stuff way over here, right? How can we take this stuff and glue it into our elements architecture? But I actually did it that way on purpose. So, but that's just me. So.
Yeah, but that's smart. Those controls that are in place, because I think we've all experienced it. Like you do a proof of concept, you do a prototype to get something up. Oh, this looks great. Let's go.
Ship it.
Yeah.
Ship it.
So I guess what you did, Rich, was pretty much like an emulation, right? Like you can say, hey, let me write this pseudocode here in one language. Oh, I got the result. Now is that feasible? If my connections with all the pieces in there, now let me try to implement that. I mean, prototyping is good. It's perfect. I love prototype, especially when you do the design, not doing code. But I think the moment where you say, hey, this is going production now, is when you have the buy-in, meaning validation. When you start to get a buy-in for the end users, that's pretty much a two-side agreement. Hey, I'm proposing this. Do you agree? Let's sign here on a dotted line, because then you make the end users equally responsible for that solution. It's not just, oh yeah, because the developer, the architect, they said it was good, we rush into production. The moment that you try to involve the end users as a buy-in and say, hey, this prototype it does the logging, minimum value, whatever in there, then is that when you can start to prototype. And then you go for something that works fine, and then you can always make better as the business changes. Agree?
I think there's a challenge over here. There's an essential difference between a product team and an IT team in the enterprise. So if you are working on a product, your product have to work for so many different people. You better to make it better quality. Otherwise, you do not even have a good way to debug your stuff. You are stuck. And but in enterprise IT, the dynamic is different. In enterprise IT, your pressure comes from the business side, and your management, get this done. We want this feature delivered. We need this business value. Now, the long-term business value of scalability, agility, and those things, those are hidden values. After working 80 hours a week, you know what? Everybody compromise. And as a result, quality is sacrificed. I did read a good idea from a German architect, though. He is the chair of German Enterprise Architecture Association or something. The name of the book is called Dynamic Enterprise Architecture. His idea is this. When you develop a software application, you will come to the Enterprise Architecture Board. We will allow you, with good reason, to go to production with technical debt. It's okay. But we document this. And when you do that quite quick version, we will also start a version which is the serious version, so that you wanted to grab business value as fast as possible. Okay, we enable that. We are not blocking you, so you will not kill us. But then you also invest on the long-term value of a well-designed solution. I think if we can adopt that idea more, maybe we have some hope. Even a consulting company is like that. So let's say when I worked for Accenture, right? We go to a client, we sign a contract. In 6 months, we're going to deliver this to you. Well, the long-term values, well, long-term, are we going to be here or not? We don't know yet. We know that if we do not deliver by the end of 6 months, we're not going to get paid, or we're going to get the kind of nasty talk from the customers, right? So therefore, you see in enterprise architecture, in enterprise environment, even in consulting environment, is different from the environment of a product company. We get a lot of pressure to compromise, which means grab whatever is there and sacrifice long-term value.
I think the consulting firms, the bigger ones, actually will become more realistic. Is the wrong word. There's a program now about more and more companies being managed service partners. So they are going to have to run whatever they've built. So it's not build it and run away. It's build it and now run it, which will actually mean they have to be a bit slightly more accountable for what they've built. I think that's the first thing. I think the other one is an ask for both for the architect group is how can we get some of these stories out there? I mean, Salesforce's marketing stories about trailblazers are exciting, but actually getting some of these stories about what well architected means and actually get that machine working, and about why an architect's the right person to hire, even if it's only for a day or two to get things put in the right direction. How do we actually tell that story? Because that's really what would inspire people, and also inspire what is an architect. So we've got more people wanting to do the right things to become architects. I'm sure that's somewhere in your marketing roadmap, but that's got to be. We want some of these architects being interviewed by Sarah, sitting on a yacht somewhere on a beach or wherever it's going to be.
Well, I'd also like to interject, like, what role the business plays in creating their own technical debt, right? These companies, they want the most ROI from their product, and they want it to be easy and fast and scalable, but they come with these requirements and these business processes that are not CRM relevant, right? I don't want to use accounts. I don't want to use opportunities. I want all these things. Well, then why do you have sometimes I want to say, why do you have Salesforce? Like, we're here to create a sales process, guide it, or create something totally different, and it's all on its own. Like, which do you want? Either something that's totally customized that you're going to pay for, you're going to pay for a custom version, or do you want to say, this is how CRMs work? These are the principles I need to build into my own business processes, and think along those lines so I can get ROI out of my platform. And what role do we as architects play in driving our customers toward that method of thinking? And maybe that's something Salesforce can help us with.
And I read this idea.
So Chris, on that note, like one thing I took very seriously when I was in the advisory practice with my engagements was, like, Salesforce isn't the best fit for everywhere we're trying to fit it, and just being transparent about that. Like, your best interest is in getting value out of Salesforce, yeah, but getting value, there's no value for the customer if it never goes live and they don't hit their metrics, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of times there's a choice where there's already a system that's in place that you can leverage, and you can hit timelines and get quicker time to value, leveraging an existing system that's already in the landscape and not positioning Salesforce in that case. And Salesforce doesn't have to be the answer to everything. And that sometimes doesn't align with what they've been sold. And that's the role of the architect to right that ship and be transparent about that, you know?
I agree with Mark. And I recently read from this book called IT Strategy. It says when you buy a software off the shelf package, the best policy for you, the best thing for you to do is to adopt your change your business process to use the software as it is intended to be used. And I found that if you twist arms with a cloud application, you are really hurting yourself, frankly. And you basically develop all those sophisticated customization to hide all the innovations which are coming continuously from Salesforce. We need to get the message out. Changing business processes is hard, but they need to be a balance.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've had to do that on a project where we had to rewrite, actually it was for a company in Tampa. We had to rewrite their custom software or redesign it in Salesforce. And they were asking for functionality that existed in their software. And I give this example in my user experience presentation, where I see sometimes it's a matter of shifting the customer's idea of what the user experience should be. So they wanted these drop downs, these pick lists where they were dependent in order to filter data, right? To get to, I think it was to get to an account. And I'm like, okay, well, we're not going to write that in Salesforce, because one, that would be a lot of customization, but two, Salesforce has a lookup that filters. They said they knew like the beginning of the account's name, you just do a lookup in Salesforce by typing the first few letters and it brings up a filtered list of accounts you can choose from. So it's a matter of sometimes readjusting that user experience and the customer's expectations, like you said, to fit with the technology.
Yeah.
And understanding how the technology works and how you might be able to alter those business processes or user processes a bit. But really, and this is something else I like to talk about, it comes down to the user experience and what the users are doing, what the personas are doing, and understanding the place that they need to get to. And as an architect, you need to figure out that path of least resistance to get them there with the lowest amount of technical debt, the lowest amount of risk, you know, the highest amount of value in the shortest amount of time. That's what I tell everyone when they're solutioning for the review board. That's how you want to think as an architect. Sometimes it's bringing in some governance, like Mark said. Sometimes it's, you know, explaining we can get to this in a different way than how it's explained or how it's expected.
Yeah, that's I think the challenge that we face on a daily basis, right? Is here's a different way to do it, and getting that message across.
Yeah, getting that buy-in.
Yes, the buy-in.
So you have to sell it, you know, as an architect, that's your job. You got to sell it. It's higher ROI, lower risk, lower cost. You got to throw those words out there, right? You know, because you're responsible for ROI. So if you can think this is going to bring more ROI because we're spending less time developing and customizing, lower technical debt. So you can just have to sell it.
Yeah. And like Chris, with your situation where you have like a bunch of stores that are just literally lift and shift, that's a good leveraging Melissa's strategy there. Like you can take an opportunity to take one even and redesign that, do you know, use something out of the box if you can, do a live demo of how you've reimagined it. And that's an opportunity to sell that value and maybe just reposition the whole strategy there once they have an understanding of how the process could be improved with what you're rolling out. So
yeah, so we're fighting those battles now. Yeah, we're fighting those battles now. A little bit late, but fighting those battles now.
I remember why we moved to Salesforce. Even today, it still makes sense. Salesforce is still the right choice for CRM. I remembered in the old days when we did not have Salesforce, we have dozens of systems which need to work together. And yet think about the managers, each manager want to expand their territory, each director want to expand their territory. So these dozens of applications do not really work well with each other at all. And then eventually, I realized, Salesforce, when we have Salesforce, Salesforce is going to eat the bread of all of these teams. So once we had Salesforce, I said, yeah, I could put me on Salesforce. So today it's still the right choice. When I compared my previous enterprise experience with my current company, which is completely depending on Salesforce for all this sales related stuff, it is a better world. It is a world with a lot of pain, but at least I think this is the right direction currently. It's better than the old world. So still buy Salesforce. And I have a friend who is working on Salesforce at the AT&T now. AT&T resisted Salesforce for so many years. IT would just never approve that until they signed the largest commercial contract with Salesforce to move to Salesforce. It's not easy, but the old world is gone. It was not working, and it will not work either in the future.
Ian, you're what you were asking about earlier, with the stories, sharing the stories, we do have plans for doing that with Well Architected, and getting those, especially around Well Architected, getting those customer stories out and partner stories on, especially the big enterprise implementations. Yeah, for sure.
Can I ask a different question for the two of you, Zane and Mark? Again, we're just about to start the San Francisco architect group. Do you see this as, this is fascinating discussion we're having here, and I think it's valuable for everybody. Is that what you see these sessions being? So therefore it's the audience for the architect group is architects having these sorts of discussions, or do you see it being broader to encourage other people to be architects? Do you have any vision about what the groups are meant to be?
Yeah, so we talked about this a lot with actually the Trailblazer community group before this segment was launched, because they had a lot of questions too of, what should this be? Do you want this to be something that's like helping people get certain certifications, that kind of thing? And personally, for me, I want the groups to be a place for architects to go to meet other architects and have these kinds of conversations. But I also think selfishly that then it's a place where someone who maybe isn't sure they're an architect should be able to go and to be like, oh, whoa, I don't understand this conversation yet, but I'm not discouraged and feel like a total fraud. I'm excited because I can't wait to dive deeper. And now I have these nice people that I now know and a safe place where I can ask them questions. And then suddenly, 6 months down the road, you're in the conversation that you thought you never would be able to be in. That's what I think we'd like these groups to be.
So it's architects having these discussions, which shouldn't be dumbed down because there are other people who don't understand, but there are people who are aspiring should be able to go, I didn't understand what they were talking about. I will go back and research it, or I'll have a conversation on the side. Okay. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, and I can say that approach works because of the group I built, and it just kind of grew and grew. And then and Charlie knows, he was in there. Just having the discussions helped all of us learn so much and helped us with things maybe we had to go back and work on or look into or research. So bringing people into group discussions helps elevate them and educate them in ways that you couldn't imagine. And that's why I think these groups are a great idea to help people that are going into an architect path or are just getting into it as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I like it. I like the direction here, as Zane said. Oh, on my mind, yes, we need to support the people with like minds and oh yeah, I've been an architect for 10 years. Oh, I'm a CTA for 5 years. And then you say, oh, I went in that call, and all of these years I've been a CTA and I found something else that I never did. Oh, I have done Salesforce forever. Now I start to see Salesforce industries. What do I know about Salesforce industries? Okay, that's one side. The other side is exactly, yes, open up for people that aspire to be architects. And yes, I didn't understand today. If we meet every Saturday, that person's not going to be every Saturday. He's going to be intimidated until we start to digest and stuff like this. But at the end of the day, if it's I don't want to be a 50-50, maybe 51-49 or even more, But at the end of the day, I want this conversation to be a little bit, not biased, a little bit more focused on the people that are actually the architects, because they are the ones that are the current advisors, right? The trusted advisors. They are the ones making decisions here to save money or to invest money. While the people coming on board, yes, they are welcome. But at the end of the day, I think the thing is that these are the people here, with probably exception of me or the other or one another, but these are the people here that on a daily basis, they facing COEs, they facing CIOs, they facing, you know, are we gonna spend $10 million or we're gonna save $20 million? And we have to make decisions. I have a Salesforce, I have invest Salesforce, but does it make sense what I'm saying? You know, a little focus in there, because
to kind of add to that, like something I say all the time when I'm doing a CTA board, I'm like working with, there's like way better architects than myself that have failed the CTA or haven't even gone for it. And there's that end of it, but then there's also the side where like there's so much of our product that I would learn from somebody that's not even an architect as well. So like we can help fit these, like there's a great conversation that can be had between an aspiring architect and a really experienced architect, because like, for instance, somebody else is going to come in that has probably a lot more experience implementing Marketing Cloud or some of our other solutions than I would. But then we can have a conversation about that. There's a really good opportunity to discuss like how that person can help fit that into their ecosystem and up-level their architecture skills, but also gives an opportunity for somebody like in my situation that gets a better understanding of how the products are being used at that level. So keeping it focused on the architectural concepts, but there's a lot of value for both ends of the spectrum. Yeah. Do we, I don't even know, I should know this, but do we have, what are the other user groups in Tampa?
We have an admin, we have a developer that I just passed to become this one. We have a women in tech, and we have a nonprofit, and we have a Pardo.
Oh, really? Okay. That's a good one. That's an interesting one. Okay, cool.
Yeah, folks, times fly. I mean, 4 minutes to 8 o'clock Eastern time, you know, we could go up to 1 o'clock in the morning, Saturday morning, doing that. So I want to come to a close here, giving, you know, once again, say thank you. I didn't say before, this is not a sales pitch, but I want to say thank you for Elements to supporting the Zoom here. You know, is our sponsor here, giving a channel. I hope one day I work for them.
Thank you, Elements, for Weezer. That was a great concert at TDX.
So
hope you got to hang out with them.
Yeah, well, it was nice, right?
Yeah.
And
I wish.
I want to give Mark and Zane, you know, the closing notes here. And for the rest of the folks, please tell about what you saw here. Melissa, you have your own group. I mean, see what's the benefits in there, and let's once again, let's capitalize on quality, not on quantity. So with that said, Mark and Zane, if you do the closing, you'll be great.
Zane is our fearless leader, so I'm going to pass it to him.
You definitely just punted that to me. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's only fair because I punted the opening to you. So thanks everyone for joining this inaugural meeting of the Tampa Architect Group. This is actually the first architect community group that I've gotten to attend since it's been official. So Carlos, congratulations on not delaying, getting it started, getting out the door. And good luck to Ian and Melissa. Maybe you've already had your first meetings, but I hope they're wildly successful. And I think that it is just so incredibly important that you all showed up. First of all, you came, you showed up. I can't wait to see the community that you're going to build because of all the discussion you just had here tonight. This is why this matters. The topics that you brought up are probably not ones you get to talk about in the office every day. You may not even have any other person to talk about this with. And the conversation, the richness of the perspectives here is something that is irreplaceable and is, I think, going to be one of the biggest velocity factors behind getting more skill in the ecosystem is what you all are doing here right now. And that I really mean that. That is, my career wouldn't exist without similar emotions throughout the community. So I know the power of you all just coming together. You're doing something big.
Thank you all.
Right.
Appreciate. I'll put this recording on our group, on the Trailblazer, on the Trailhead group in there. If everybody here is a member, I'm gonna share on the Trailblazer community in there, where YouTube, LinkedIn. I mean, we're going there. Until the next time, thank you so much for your time, and let's keep growing the community together. Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Bye-bye.
setting it up, Carlos.
Bye-bye.
Good job.
Bye.